All right, welcome. Today we're diving into a really cool technique that can totally level up your English. It's called sentence inversion, and trust me, it's the secret sauce to sounding more dramatic and, sophisticated. So, have you ever wanted to make your statements pop? Add a little extra punch, a bit more class. Well, what if I told you there's a simple little trick that can do exactly that? It's something that makes your English sound way more formal, more literary, and honestly, just super impressive.
Okay, just listen to this sentence for a second. Little did she know that the interview was going to be a disaster. Whoa, it sounds really dramatic, doesn't it? Almost like it's pulled straight from a book. Well, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about today. It's all about emphasis, and you're going to see it's way easier to learn than it sounds.
So what is this magic trick? It's called sentence inversion. Yeah, that's the secret weapon, the grammatical engine that powers those really advanced sounding sentences. It's a major tool for adding some real style to how you speak and write. Okay, so at its heart, inversion is actually super simple. All we're doing is flipping the normal word order. So you know how we usually say subject, then verb? Well, with inversion, we put the verb, or at least part of it, before the subject. And why do we do this? It's all about one thing, adding emphasis and making things sound more dramatic.
And here's the crazy part. You already know how to do this. Seriously, every single time you ask a question in English, you're using inversion. Think about it. You don't say, you are tired. You flip it, right? You say, are you tired? We're just going to take that exact same move and use it to make our statements more powerful.
So why should you even bother with this? Well, the benefits are huge. First off, it makes what you're saying so much more striking and memorable. It's also perfect for formal writing. It gives your stories that dramatic, literary feel. And hey, if you're studying for an advanced exam like a C1 or C2, this is an absolute game changer for impressing the examiners.
Okay, let's get into the simple formula for this. How do we actually build these sentences? I promise, if you can ask a question, you can do this. The structure is super predictable.
Let's break it down into a simple 4-step recipe. Step 1, you start with a special trigger word. We'll talk more about these, but think of words like never or not only. Step 2, add an auxiliary verb, just like in a question. So do, did, have, will. Step 3, pop in your subject, I, she, the car. And finally, step 4, add the main verb, but in its basic form. That's it. That's the whole formula. All right, now for the fun part, inversion triggers in action. We've got the formula, so let's open up our toolkit and look at the specific words and phrases that actually set off this whole inversion process.
Okay, our first group of triggers are all about emphasizing that something is super rare or totally unique, stuff that almost never happens.
So take a normal sentence like, I have never been so upset. Now let's invert it. Never have I been so upset. Can you feel that? The emotion is so much stronger. The pattern is exactly what we just learned. Trigger word, never, auxiliary verb, have, then the subject, I. It works exactly the same for words like rarely and the slightly more formal one, seldom. And you've definitely heard this one before, probably from that party game, right? Never have I ever. The whole point of the game's title is that little bit of drama you get from the inversion. It's a perfect example of this structure being used out in the real world. All right, next group. These triggers are perfect for when you need to lay down the law. We're talking about stating firm rules or policies. They add a real sense of authority and, well, seriousness to what you're saying.
So a standard sentence is just a rule. But listen to the inverted one. Under no circumstances are you allowed to smoke on a plane. It just sounds like an official, non-negotiable command, doesn't it? It's so much stronger. And notice that little trick there? The not from the original sentence gets kind of soaked up into the word no in the trigger phrase.
Okay, next up is one of the most common and, honestly, most useful triggers you'll find. Not only, but also. This is your go-to for connecting two ideas you want to emphasize, and it usually makes the second point sound even more amazing. Now, here's the key thing to remember. The inversion only happens in that first part, right after not only. So, he succeeded becomes not only did he succeed, and she plays video games becomes not only does she play video games.
The second part, after but she also, just stays as a normal sentence. That's the trick.
All right, our next group uses the word only. These are all about emphasizing a condition. It's like saying, this one thing can only happen if this other thing happens first. It's about cause and effect, but with a whole lot of extra drama.
Just feel the difference here. Only then did I understand the problem really shines a spotlight on that one specific moment of aha. It just tells a much better story, you know? The when of it all suddenly becomes the most important piece of information.
This next group is another one that's just fantastic for storytelling. We're talking about triggers like hardly, scarcely, and no sooner. These are for when one thing happens, and then, bam, something else happens immediately after, often interrupting it.
This is such a classic literary way to phrase things. It builds up this great suspense, right? You can almost picture someone getting all comfy in bed, and then the phone rings. The pattern is usually hardly had I followed by when, or no sooner had I followed by than. It's a really elegant way to structure a sentence.
And for our last trigger group, we've got a really special one, little. This is almost like a storyteller's secret weapon. You use it to create this amazing sense of irony or drama, basically letting the audience know something that the character in the story has no clue about.
Just this one short phrase is so powerful. It's basically a fancy literary way of saying, he had no idea. You hear it all the time with words like know or realize, and it just immediately pulls you in. You know, like, little did he know his life was about to change forever. It's just pure storytelling magic.
All right, so now it's your turn to try this out. That's the whole deal with inversion. A simple flip in word order, kicked off by a few special words, that just adds a ton of emphasis and style to your English.
And just remember this, and hey, notice the grammar here. Only once you start using new grammar structures will you actually master them. Look, don't go crazy and use inversion in every sentence, but start looking for those perfect moments to add that extra punch, that extra emphasis. So I guess my question for you is, when are you going to give your first one a shot?